Hey guys, it's Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today's video is going to be my April reading wrap-up in which I seem to have redeemed myself. The last few months I've been reading very little and kind of like not enjoying what I've been reading. But this month I did really good. I started the month really strong. By mid-month, I think I had already read like 6 books. So I was really excited about that. Let me fix the camera. I was really excited about that. But then towards the end of the month, I started reading a series and then I kind of felt a little bit slumpy again. This year I have been trying to, because I have a lot of series that are already completed on my TBR, that I wanted to read at least one series a month to kind of get the series out of the way. But I've noticed that when I try to like marathon a series, that's when I go into a reading slump. At the beginning of the month, I was reading standalones and I was loving it. And then once I started reading that series that I was telling you guys about, the first book was really good. The second one was okay. And then by the third book, I was kind of tired. And they weren't even like really long books. They were in the average 350 pages, which is your average length book. So I think for the month of May, I'm going to tackle my series a little bit different. I'm still going to try to read one whole series throughout the month, but instead of marathoning it, I'll read one book and then I'll read a couple of books in between. Like I'll read a couple of books in between each book, and hopefully that'll prevent me from going into a reading slump. So right now I'm reading a book from Karen Slaughter. I was hoping I'd finish it by the time I filmed this video, but I didn't. Maybe about a fourth or a third of it. No, maybe about a fourth of the way in. And I don't want to rush through it because I want to enjoy it. So yeah, anyway, I am not ready with stats and I am not ready with prompts that I've completed for my 52 book prompt. So I'm just gonna leave my latest A to Z reading challenge on the description box and hopefully you guys will know where I'm at with that. Sorry, I'm just not ready for that. And I'm trying to battle the sun going down because I've been filming all day and the sun is about to go down. So I'm going to start with the books that I read kind of towards the beginning of the year. I'm going to leave the series towards the end because that's kind of the one that put me in a reading slump. So in no particular order, I was going to go in the way that I read them this year, this month, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So the first book that I have here is They Went Left by Monica Hesse. She also wrote The Girl in the Blue Coat, which I loved. Did I read it last month or 2 months ago? I don't remember, but this is another book that's set around World War II. This is after World War II. We follow a main character named Sophie, who is a Jewish girl who has just been liberated from a concentration camp. The war has finished and they're being freed. And unfortunately, all of her family has died during the war except for her brother. She knows her brother did make it. They were kind of separated. So we follow her journey here in trying to find her brother. It's a World War II story. It's not kind of sad. It's very sad, based on true events, not just the whole World War II. And just like with The Girl in the Blue Coat, there's a huge twist at the end that I didn't see coming. I loved it. This was probably my favorite book that I read this year, this month. And I feel like, the night that I read this, I think I slept for like 2 hours, like two and a half hours. And then I had to go to work the next day, but I just couldn't put it down. I loved it that much. Highly recommend. Next, I read Love Your Life by Sophie Kinsella. It's been many years since I've read a book from Sophie Kinsella, or it feels like it. So I was really excited to pick up a book from her. Unfortunately, this was not my favorite book. We follow Ava, who is a girl who's just gotten broken up with, and she's kind of lost all hope in love and dating apps. So she decides to go on this like writer's retreat. She is writing a novel in hopes that the retreat will kind of like reignite her imagination and help her finish her book. This retreat is kind of like an anonymous type retreat. You're not allowed to tell your real name to people, tell real details of your life to people. And while she's on this retreat, she meets this guy named Dutch, and they fall in love right away. It's like, talk about insta love. but they do. And then they decide to continue their romantic relationship once the retreat ends. Once they go back to London, they start realizing that real life is a lot different than the fantasy world that they were living in during the retreat. And maybe they're not so compatible after all. So it's a chick lit book. Talks about romance, miscommunication, just a little bit of drama. It wasn't as funny as I expect Sophie Kinsella books to be. I tend to usually just laugh out loud with her books. This book didn't quite let me laugh out loud, but I did enjoy it still. Then I read You Have a Match by Emma Lord. I really enjoyed Tweet Cute. I thought that was a really cute story. This one, however, felt kind of flat for me. We follow our main character, Abby, who takes a DNA test. You know, she's playing around with some friends, and she realizes that she has a full-blooded sister somewhere in the world. If you guys have ever taken a DNA test, it shows you like you have a match, like if you have like a possible family match. I've done the ancestry DNA test, and I get like emails constantly like, this person could be your fourth cousin, things like that. But she gets a match saying that she has a full sister. To her knowledge, she's the oldest of 4 siblings, and her parents are still married. So she's kind of like, how do I have this older sister? So she decides to kind of go on a hunt to find this older sister. Eventually she does meet up with her. And then there's also another storyline where she goes to camp. Coincidentally, it's in the same area where this new sister lives. But while she's in camp, she's trying to deal with the whole family secret, plus being in love with her best friend who doesn't know that she's in love with him. So it felt like those two stories didn't quite like intertwine as well. You kind of felt that you were being pulled from one story to another. It felt like two stories that weren't meshing very well. So for that reason, I only give it 3 stars, and it was kind of like forgettable. When I was kind of getting ready for this video, I was like, what was this book about? So then I had to read the synopsis again, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember now. So yeah, kind of forgettable. Then I also read A Man Calleduva by Frederick Bachman. I finally read this book. This book has been like on my TBR for a long time. I hadn't been able to buy it. I bought it for my birthday, actually. You guys would have seen it in my birthday haul. But we followed this guy named Uva, who is kind of a grumpy old man. He is widowed, and he kind of just is a mean old man. He has just kind of isolated himself from everyone. Like, he has no family, and he doesn't really get along with his neighbors. But then eventually he gets new neighbors that move in, and they kind of take him under his wing. This kind of reminded me of The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And therefore I feel like it took away from the enjoyment, because they're very similar in regards to story-wise. So I feel like if I had read this book before, I wouldn't have enjoyed the Eudora book as much as I did. However, because I read Eudora first, I feel like this was a copy of that book, and therefore I didn't feel as connected as I did with that book, because I felt like I had read this story before. It was still a wonderful story, great message, but it didn't have that thing that everybody seems to love. Because for me, that thing that everybody loves about this book, I found it with the Eudora Honeysett book. So still great book. I think still you should read The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett. Even if you've read this, I feel like if you enjoyed this book, you'll enjoy that one. Then I read Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan. This is the 3rd book in the Crazy Rich Asians series. It's a trilogy. Each book has its own story, but this book felt kind of a book on its own. Books 1 and 2, I feel like, revolves around a lot on Nick and Rachel's love life and getting together and getting the family to accept them. However, this book didn't deal with any of that. In this book, we follow Nick and the passing of his grandmother. It's not a spoiler. It's in the back of the book, and being that she's very rich, they're going through the reading of her will, and then deciding who gets what, and all the rich people problems of who's getting what, and how come I'm only getting this and I'm not getting that. But highly entertaining. Kind of made me roll my eyes a few times, because I was like, oh, that's such a rich person problem. but that's the name of the book. So it was like it makes sense. And that's why it was so entertaining. I loved it. This was kind of a lengthy book. It's over 500 pages, and I enjoyed it. I read it super fast. It was a fun book. I think it's my favorite out of the three, actually. So highly recommend. If you haven't read this one, and you've read Crazy Rich Asians but haven't read the second book, I don't think you need to read the second book. I think my second book was my least favorite. This one, highly recommend. Then I read the fifth book in the Bridgerton series. This is To Sir Philip with Love by Julia Quinn. We follow Eloise's story here. Now it's hard to tell you guys what this book is about because after season 1 of Bridgerton on Netflix, it kind of like it's kind of thrown the books out of order. But in this book we follow Eloise's story. This book the beginning of this book kind of intertwines with the ending of the fourth book, because at the end of the fourth book, Eloise kind of escapes. And in this book, we see where she escaped to. So in this book, we follow Eloise's love story. She is kind of corresponding with Sir Philip, who is the husband of her cousin. Her cousin has passed away, and they start a friendship via letters. Eventually, those letters become a little bit more romantic, and Sir Philip's like, well, I should probably ask her to marry me. He, however, doesn't tell her that he has children. Somehow she didn't know that her cousin was married with children. And once she gets to the manor or wherever it is that Sir Philip lives, I don't think it's a mansion. But anyway, she realizes, he has kids and you never told me, this whole miscommunication. Plus, it's very scandalous that she is visiting a man and his kids when she is a single woman. So there's the whole aspect of, a single woman being alone with a man and the whole spiel. Eloise is my favorite character in the series, but still, Enough from a Gentleman, which is Benedict's story, still my favorite book. We'll see how the other three that are left in the series play up to that one, but this one was still good. I enjoyed it. Then I read a nonfiction book. This is Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams by Matthew Walker. I really enjoyed this book. This book is basically a study done about what happens to our bodies when we don't sleep and when we do sleep. All the benefits, the risks and benefits of getting a good and quality night's sleep. Just because you sleep 8 hours or 7 hours a night, but you're tossing and turning and waking up and getting up, it's not really quality. So this book just talks about like I said, all the benefits. When you sleep, you're overall tend to be healthier, less risks for cancer, strokes, weight gain, Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia. Like getting a good quality sleep affects your body in so many ways that a lot of people don't understand. I get up at 4 in the morning to go to work. I go to sleep at 8:30, and a lot of people make fun of me because I go to sleep so early. But you know what? I'm not tired at work. I don't need to rely on drinking coffee every morning to feel functional. So I guess the joke's on them, my friends. Highly recommend. This is available on audiobook. So if you have Libby through your library, it's available there. So pick it up because it's really good. That was my commute read. I meant to read it, but I actually listened to most of it on my way to work. So, and then last but not least, the series that I read this month was the Under the Never Sky series by Veronica Rossi. The first book is Under the Never Sky. The second book is Into the Still Blue. Look at those covers. And then the last one is No. The second one is Through the Evernight. It's just the guy by himself. And then the last one is Into the Still Blue. That has both of them. So yeah, this is the series that I read. I can only talk about the first book because obviously I don't want to spoil it. So let me put the other three down. So in this series, we follow a girl named Aria who lives in an underworld community called Pots. Just like in Horde, which was the book that I read, the series that I read last month, We have the people living underground, and then the people that are living like on Earth, like in the where you and I live right now, are people who have adapted to the deadly things that are killing people. So in this series, it's called the ether, and the ether are like lightning storms that are happening and killing people. There's people who have become zombies, people who have adapted, have developed some like powers that involve being able to like smell people's emotions, smells people's thoughts, weird things like that. Obviously, there's a government secret conspiracy that they have to take over and fight throughout the rest of the two books. It's kind of a dystopian sci-fi story. And the world that's underground, it's very like technologically advanced. It kind of reminded me of WALL-E. You guys know in like the cartoon WALL-E, how the people lived in kind of like a virtual reality things. That's how I felt like people lived here in this series. This series reminded me a lot of the Razorland series, like I said, which was the Horde series by Ana Aguirre. And I feel like that's why it put me in a reading slump, because I was like, I felt like I just read this like not too long ago. From what I hear other people, because I looked up some reviews and a lot of people loved it. They thought it was action-packed and great romance. I just felt it was okay. It didn't blow my socks off or anything. And it's unfortunate. Again, I think it's because I had just read Horde. And Horde is also about, people living underground. Somebody gets expelled to the outer world and they have to adapt to living under the conditions of the people that are living above ground. There's some sort of government conspiracy that they have to undertake, and there's a resistance that they end up joining in order to cause a revolution type thing. I felt like I had just read that, and after reading this series I felt a little slumpy, and I had to pick up a murder mystery book which is why I'm reading the book by, what is it called? Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. I saw that there's a series on Netflix, so I figured I would read it so I can watch the series. Right now, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, but yeah, you guys will hear my thoughts about that book next month. So I hope you guys enjoyed the super long video. When I read a lot of books, I try to go as fast as I can, so I hope you guys don't mind, and I hope that I made sense, first of all. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.